so hard not to be in the way.
Go.
You were in the way.
I'll go.
Hey guys, this is 262talks. This is Joe Biden's America. My name's Kyle. We've got Daniel here.
Yeah, let's go, Joe Biden. I'm all lived up.
We've got Nick, who's making noise anyway.
What's Greg?
We've got Ashley, who's kind of like something's going on over there.
I'm just hanging out.
And we've got Hannah.
Hi, friends.
And we've got Hope.
Hello, snowflakes.
We all wait. Hold on. I gotta drink some conservative tears really quick.
Oh hell no!
Delicious.
Hey, okay, I'm about to dial in. I have to go get dinner.
Bro, you literally appeared just to say hi.
What? No, I'm gonna do it on the. I wouldn't have been on here for 30 minutes. Come on, now.
Oh, well,
I'm gonna call with my phone.
okay, well, Brian's hopping in, so
And Brian's here.
and Brian is hopping in.
All right, I'll be in this in 1 second. I just want to show my picture.
All right,
Hey, Brian.
we already started, by the way.
We
You're
can't hear
You're
you.
muted, Brian.
There you go. All right. Well, Kyle, you're up.
Well, I mean, I don't care how we start.
Go lead.
Who's got something to say about the election?
Bro,
Holy shit, we finally fucking won. Like, well, it's not official yet, but it's pretty
I feel
much
like a
official.
liberal for the first time in like 4 years. No, I'm like straight up. I'm literally I'm like repping a Biden for president shirt at literally every single shift I've worked this week. And I put a Biden Harris sticker on my car that I plan on taking off next week.
Shortly.
You know what's funny though?
What?
This is all over now, and I just ordered a decal for my car that says "Make America Emo Again."
Oh, I love that.
You're relevant now.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
if you think that the MAGA heads are going anywhere, like
Oh, Brian.
Brian, hit your camera, like the camera button, and then pick choose virtual background. You should be able to pick a picture.
Excuse us with our technical difficulties.
BRB real quick.
Yeah, it's like the little camera button. You should hit that, and then it says choose virtual background.
We're doing great, guys. We're doing great.
Yeah,
We're
this is a
doing
ve-
fantastic.
very
This is what
rocky
happens
start.
when you ask me to lead.
Hey, you're gonna have to edit this out.
But really, I mean, like, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about how this all went down? Like,
I was so
Anxiety
nervous.
inducing.
I think we were all pretty anxious for the first couple days there.
I mean,
Group.
I actually for like the first 2 days, Kyle, I thought you were smoking the hopium.
oh yeah,
You were
Yeah,
way
you're-
too confident, way too early. I thought.
Daniel was being a pessimist the entire time. Like,
it's better to not be surprised than be disappointed.
yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Sorry
all
if I keep looking
geography,
away.
guys.
I'm still watching the map and everything right now to see where we're at.
It's all geography. I mean, like, once we got, I think it was Michigan. Was it Michigan that we got right before? Anything was Michigan the last one other than Pennsylvania? I know it's called today.
Arizona? Well, that hasn't
Wait,
officially been
was-
called by some places, but
Was Pennsylvania
Michigan-
officially called?
Well, Pennsylvania was called by Decision Desk, and that's why Decision Desk made their final call that Biden won.
But Associated Press still hasn't called it.
Yeah, they actually haven't. I got a thought about that though. I think that media is being. I'm turning this off because my face just looks wild.
Your eyes were tweaking me.
Yeah, that was kind of messing with me.
I looked like I was like a Sith Lord or something. But I think that media is being extra careful because, like, honestly, if you look at this map, if you look at these numbers, it's really obvious that Biden won. Biden's the winner. But for some reason, like media is so hesitant to call this, and I think it's because of Trump's bad behavior.
I think it's because he's dishing out these lawsuits left and right. They're afraid that he's gonna, probably hit them with the same.
Well, I think it also
Sure.
has something to do with fear because they don't want to do what happened in the 2000 election where NBC called the election for Gore, but then like a few hours later, Fox News called it for Bush.
Right, and then they had the whole
All
recount
had to
and
do a big
everything.
switch, and then they all looked like idiots. So I think it's one of those things where it's like they just don't want to be the first network to call it, you know?
Someone's
And
got
with the mail-in ballots and everything, it's just been like razor thin. They're gonna have to recount a couple states anyways. I know Georgia, they're gonna recount. Wisconsin, he's forcing a recount for no fucking reason, even though Biden is, up 20,000, more than 20,000.
That's the thing. Like mathematically, when Wisconsin and Michigan flipped, we know we're going to get Nevada. Nevada's a safe state for us. So right there, that was when most analysts felt comfortable saying, okay, Biden's going to win this. But the media doesn't want to for some reason. And my opinion is that it's because Trump is out here not conceding. He might very well become the first U.S. president not to concede. And so the media wants to be responsible, and they want to show how every vote's getting counted and when we should responsibly call this. But if this was 4 years ago, 8 years ago, I think this election would have been called by every news source a night ago, 24 hours ago already. Maybe more.
On that note, can we talk about what would happen if he doesn't concede? Because that's something I'm actually really worried about, and I have no idea what that even could look like.
It would pose some legal trouble, because I mean, after inauguration day, whether or not he concedes or not is irrelevant because he officially has no power at that point, unless he made some kind of wild move in the Supreme Courts to try to get all of the mail-in ballots discounted or some shit like that, or he got his MAGA heads really, really riled up and they did something crazy. Him not conceding almost is irrelevant because after inauguration day, like, what is he gonna do? Lock himself in the Oval Office and
I think worst comes to worst. As soon as Biden is made, commander in chief or whatever, he'll just send in the National Guard to pull Trump's ass out. Like, and I'm sure that's, I would not mind watching that video.
the big sweaty baby being dragged out of the White House. No, I mean, can I bring up I'm all lived up like everyone else is right now, but to be my typical self, I want to bring up the fact that I hope this is almost a wake-up call for the DNC and the Democratic Party as a whole, because after all 4 years of Trump and all of the fucking bullshit, the fact that it is still like to the point where it was like this close in a lot of these states, and the turnout for Trump was astronomically larger than we thought it was. I think I don't know. I hope it's a wake-up call to the DNC to not push these fucking bland fucking geriatric men that like are not exciting to anyone. Like most of the people who showed out and showed up were anti-Trump for the most part, and they weren't pro-Biden in any like sense of the word. Like there were Biden supporters, but I think a majority of them, like myself, like Hope, are more anti-Trump. And that doesn't necessarily inspire the most, diehard support for that kind of candidate. Like, there's no reason that Wisconsin should have been this close. There's no reason that like half of these fucking states should have been this close.
Well, Wisconsin is arguably just as close as it was in 2016. It's just been flip-flopped because Trump only won Wisconsin last election by like 23,000.
Also, 2018. I mean, 2018, our governor's race was the closest in the country.
Yeah, but I mean, those are different circumstances. Those people, Trump wasn't coming off of an impeachment. Trump wasn't coming off of sending out secret police after protesters and stuff, Like,
I have input on this. It feels like, because like you said, a lot of Biden supporters are mostly just anti-Trump, but Trump supporters are like sucking his dick, Trump supporters, you know? Sorry. So it's like they're
No,
not
it's inaccurate.
they're not wavering, they're not hesitant, but people who support, I guess, Biden were more like how can we move forward with change, like with the options presented in front of us. So I think that discouraged a lot of people. It was like in 2016 from voting at all, or that's the vibe I got
Yeah.
from at least people that I know.
I mean, I have also seen a lot of people saying, like, you know, they didn't vote just because it's two shitty options that they didn't want to choose between.
But one is so much shittier than the other. Like this, I don't get that. They're
Yeah.
both shitty, but one is exponentially worse.
See, I don't.
And there's like facts to cover that up. That's what I don't get either. Is like there's actual stuff to like back up how he is. So how is it lesser of the two evils when Joe Biden really isn't, you know, that
It's just that
bad?
blissful ignorance. They just, you know, they love him so much they don't give a shit what he does, you know?
Well, it's like I can almost understand, like from a certain point of view, a person who doesn't want to vote for the shinier of two turds, because for 2 elections in a row, I've had to do that. And like, you know, I won't, you know, lie, like having to vote for, you know, Biden on Tuesday, it didn't feel good. Like, I'm not gonna say I left the polling location being like, yes, I feel great about my choice. Like, I went in and I voted for who I had to vote for, but then I voted on the down ballot stuff, which is like, I don't understand these people who are like, oh, I don't want to vote for either of the two presidential candidates. Okay, still go and vote for your local stuff though. Like I don't understand this notion of, oh, I don't like who's running for president, so I'm not going to vote on any of the local stuff, which arguably has more effect on your day-to-day life.
Right. There was so much more on the ballot. Like holy shit, who really won this election? It was the drugs. Come on now.
That's what really pisses me off too, is that I hope no one watching this feels called out, but there have been people who I've like been back and forth with, and they're just like, oh, well, I feel like it's more powerful to vote at a local level, so I didn't vote in this election. Like, what else do you think was on that ballot on Tuesday?
Yeah, there was plenty of local shit on that ballot. Like Todd Onstad, who we interviewed in episode whatever the fuck it was.
Who won? And I just want to say this to every future candidate in Kenosha politics. Bad luck not to come on our podcast.
Oh yeah.
Crystal Miller got
Oh,
her
yeah.
ass handed to her.
Got spanked.
Okay.
Congrats, Todd.
Congrats, Todd.
Right.
Poggers.
We call that karma, bitch. So
We gotta. He actually mentioned that he wouldn't mind coming back on post-election, so we should have him on and be like, how does it feel to win?"
That'd be
right.
awesome.
You know, Daniel, to your point, I kept my mouth shut because I wanted to let you guys all agree on that. But to your point about elections being so close because of wishy-washy candidates like Biden, I don't agree. I think that we are going to keep having close presidential elections for a long time because we have, like, Biden, the reason Biden didn't do even better than he could have, than he should have, than he did, was because he was framed to be a socialist and people bought it.
Mm-hmm.
No, people,
Even though
Trump,
he said he wasn't.
You've got
Even
Trump
though he
over
said.
here, who's framed to be, and although he is, he's also framed to be, just like Mitt Romney was framed to be, this ultimate extreme of the other side. And I think if both sides keep framing their opponent as this ultimate extreme, you're going to keep having close elections because you're making people pick a camp instead of just offering up a candidate that might represent ideas from both sides of the aisle.
well, see, I don't necessarily agree on this whole framing.
The fact that.
Go ahead,
Go
Brian.
ahead, Brian.
Oh no, go ahead.
I didn't hear that you cut out.
Brian, you haven't talked this whole time.
You
ahead.
go, Brian.
No,
Yeah,
I didn't
Brian,
hear
you
that
never
he
talk.
started
Go,
talking.
Brian.
That's why I didn't know he started talking.
Kind of like piggyback off what Kyle was saying. I think this election was a little bit different than most because of what that candidate, and we're talking about our former President Trump now, I think what he manifested from his base. and I think his base, which was, you know, a lot of hate, a lot of blind following the blind, almost very cultish. Like he said something, and you know, everybody believed it, and especially his base. People who follow him, like Little Pimp, you know, he can call a platinum artist Little Pimp, blindly follows him, and his little stupid ass gets on stage, doesn't correct him, goes up there and talks about MAGA
Right.
2024. It was like, I think, and I'll stick to this. I think he cultivated a lot of ignorance, and I think we kind of don't understand that a lot of ignorant people can vote. So when you say ignorant shit and a lot of people believe it, they go out there and they vote. And it was a lot of hey, you got people who go out there, every single one of you been out there for Black Lives Matter and had to face, you know, some type of police backlash, right? But people can go and fight against our democracy, and the police are there to protect them, or the police doesn't do anything for them at all. So it's this candidate, he emboldened hate. And I think that's what it was. It wasn't so much the socialism or anything like that. This is my personal opinion, right? I don't think his big thing was socialism. I think he made it cool to just be like, hey, you're a marginalized, you know, you're a minority. I don't like you. You know, I'm a supremacist, and I can outly say that and be like, my president has my back. And you know, there was a lot of people I seen that went out and voted. Now, I got to give a shout out to Milwaukee. I got to give a shout out to Atlanta. Got to give a shout out to Detroit. Missing one because these are the four, Philly. But these are the four, you know, major cities. You know, Milwaukee carried Wisconsin to make it blue because Racine, Kenosha. I think Madison was blue, but
from what I saw, it was mainly Milwaukee and Madison, but Milwaukee really put it over the top.
Milwaukee put us over. Detroit,
and that's what we're seeing throughout the country. Is it's all these like these more urban voters that are coming out and actually showed face for Biden, because and I feel like a lot of that has to do with, you know, him being Obama's vice president,
or what Daniel said. Fact that a lot of people were just anti fucking Trump.
You know, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, to speak to what like Kyle said before, you know, about Joe being, you know, painted as like this socialist. I don't really think that that's as effective as a strategy as, you know, people are trying to make it think, because the only people who really bought that Joe Biden was a socialist were people who were already voting for Trump anyway. And it was one of those things where it was like, if you supported Trump and he says, oh, Joe Biden's a socialist, when his entire career, he's been known to be like, you know, that
moderate
across the aisle guy, you know. That strategy just doesn't pan out when it comes to like a candidate like, you know, like Joe. Like, say, you know, if it was Bernie running against, you know, Trump, he has a stronger case for just railing him by saying, oh, he's a socialist. He's a socialist.
Well, yeah, because Bernie actually does identify as a democratic socialist, you know.
And it's one of those things where it's like, I almost wish the Democrats, like, they never would, but it would be funny for me to see them, you know, use some of the tactics against the Republicans that they use against us. So like, oh, you call all of us a socialist, no matter, you know, who we could put like Pete Buttigieg out there and they would have called him a socialist. But like the fact that, you know, the Trump Republican Party actually has, you know, a lot of the characteristics of fascist, you know, factions and neo-fascist factions, but they don't outright be like, but they're a bunch of fascists. You know, it's one of those things where instead of being like, oh, I'm not a socialist, blah, 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 you should be like, yeah, but you're a fucking fascist. Like, you know, like, I don't know. Like, I know that they would never do that, and I know, Kyle, you were shaking your head at that, but it would be funny for me because it's more accurate to call the MAGA movement a fascist movement than it is to call Joe Biden, you know, presidential run as a socialist movement.
I mean, there's a lot of similarities between, you know, the MAGA people and then, like, for instance, Hitler Youth and all like the cult like personality that he. I don't know if anybody else saw like all the people making like prayer circles and stuff around the like counting centers and everything.
They're outside praying like on a live feed to try to get them to stop counting. They've got like
It's just
hats.
exactly. It just looks like a cult, and I don't know. There's
If
just
it looks like a cult, it talks like a cult, and walks like a cult, it might be a cult.
uncanny
Wait.
resemblance.
Can you guys clear something up for me? So in the states that he's ahead in, we want them to count or stop counting the votes. And the states that he's behind in, we count the votes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There has been Trump supporters in fucking. There was Trump supporters in Pennsylvania, and they were all like, "Stop the count, stop the count." And then there was Trump supporters in Nevada and Arizona that were saying like, "Count my vote, count my." Like they were both chanting different things, but they were there.
I saw
like,
that
it was
on Daniel's story.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they don't know what the fuck is going on. It's all to benefit whatever gives Trump the best outcome is all that they're interested in. They're not interested in fair elections. They're interested in him winning, and that's it.
See, I'm not surprised that you libtards don't understand the gymnastics it takes for a Republican to win the office. You see,
Oh my
now, you know, like, it's
That's so perfect.
like the main argument I use against people on social media where they're like, "Oh, it's rigged." I'm like, "Okay, how the fuck did we rig it?" But then Mitch McConnell won. Like,
Yeah, like we weren't interested in the Senate or anything.
like, why don't we have why don't we have it? Like, why don't we own every single seat in the House, every single seat in the Senate, and then we also like somehow like switched up where Bernie Sanders actually won? Like, what are you?
And it's like at such a close margin. You feel like if we were to rig it, we would give ourselves like a landslide victory. We wouldn't be winning by 1,000 fucking votes in Georgia or 4,000 votes in
Florida.
Yeah, we would have had all that shit. We would have called this shit on the first night if it was rigged.
Well, what happened with the ballots? Remember, there was this whole thing about how ballots were dumped and whatever. You know, was that like?
Where'd you hear that? Fox News or what? Like,
probably, I don't know.
There were not a lot, and apparently it was an accidental error, supposedly, where a handful of like military votes were actually like dumped in the trash. These were early votes too. And 9 of those like hundreds of votes were Trump's. So the whole article was about how Trump's votes got thrown away, all 9 of them.
And we saw the video that Eric Trump had posted of burning ballots, which was completely debunked like right the fuck away. Pretty sure Twitter already like smacked a flag on that shit, saying that it's misinformation because it was revealed that they were sample ballots.
Bro,
and there is
Eric Trump is like talking shit about a 4-year-old. Let's not even bully that man.
Yeah, you're right. But I mean, like, and it was only like 9 sample ballots. And so even if they were actual legitimate ballots, it wouldn't have fucking mattered. He's not losing by 9 points anywhere. He's fucking losing by thousands and thousands. And that's why I think it's ridiculous that he's asking for all these recalls or like recounts in these states where even Scott Walker tweeted saying, Scott Walker, you know, he's a notorious bitch for Trump. You know,
he's just even, a bitch in general, yeah.
Even he is saying like, you know, a recount would make sense if it was within a couple hundred, but 20,000 is a high hurdle to fucking jump over. And a recount is not going to change 20. Like, sure, there might be like in the last recount where what was it, like 131 votes actually got flipped, but it's 20,000. Like, it's not going to fucking matter. I don't understand.
I think, I mean, you know, Donald Trump keeps screaming that the liberals are trying to steal the election, and it feels like he's the only one trying to steal the election.
Yes, thank you.
He's like one of the only higher ups too. that actually like believe his bullshit, because nobody else that
Yeah,
are
it's been
like,
eerily
even remotely close to his level believe him. It's only the fan base.
it's been
Like
eerily
the
silent
MAGA
from
supporters.
Republicans. Like we have not
Well,
heard
it's like,
a lot of anything from Republicans because they are skeptical on the bullshit.
Donald Trump
well,
wants to
wouldn't
he
you?
wants to do what every dictator does and steal an election. He wants to do what Putin does and steal an election. But he's realizing that America is not really set up in a way that allows him to do that. And that's the good thing. Ryan, you were talking though.
Well, think about it. If you went to sleep and Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, Georgia were all blue, and then you woke up and then they were all red, and then you woke up and they were all blue, how does that happen? How
Mail-in
are the
ballots.
Democrats not really stealing elections? What do you mean the mail-in? Oh, you talking about those things that they didn't allow us to count before the election?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those
exactly.
actually count? Oh.
It's
Well,
massive,
Oh.
right?
That's
They-
what
But-
that's what the whole thing is too. He showed like he was winning almost across the board throughout the country, but then they started counting the mail-in ballots, and they
What's up
are
with these mail-in ballots? Why are there mail-in
Yeah.
ballots?
He's like, I
Please
told
somebody
my
answer that for me.
I told my entire fan base to not put in mail-in ballots. Okay, so it makes sense that none of his fan base may like put in mail-in ballots. I think they said that it was like almost over 80% of the mail-in ballots that were coming in were all for Biden because he actually pushed for the mail-in ballots while Trump was, talking shit about them the entire time. I feel like he low-key knew what was going to happen from the start, and that's why he was pushing this narrative that, mail-in ballots are easy to, fucking, I don't know, they're easy to make fraudulent, just so that he could have that excuse when it did show up that he was fucking losing because of the mail-in ballots.
Nick, are they doing the mail-in ballots because of COVID?
Yeah,
COVID isn't even real. I don't know why.
Are you
Well,
talking about the whole pandemic that Trump kind of was just like, it's like the flu, it'll be over in April, but
Yeah,
it
right.
wasn't really over. But it got warmer and it went away, didn't it?
Yeah, it went away.
Then he
Yeah.
said after election day it would go away, but it's
so
this
liberal here. Like, what's going on, guys?
Well, it's like the funniest thing that I saw was on election night when he made that speech being like, stop the vote, stop counting. If we would have stopped counting at that point, he still would have lost. Like
He still would have lost.
he still would have lost if on the election,
Oh my.
whatever, midnight or whenever he called it.
It was like 2:00 in the morning.
he was losing electoral and popular votes. So like I don't know what the angle was with that.
Let's just like for
Well,
the
they stopped the like press reports or any type of anything, any speech he's giving. As soon as they hear something fake, even Fox News did that.
yeah, a lot
They,
of
like,
a lot of
stopped
the news
airing
sources have been cutting off of it.
Whatever it was.
Yeah,
Can
But-
I ask you guys a serious question?
of course.
I'm not on Facebook right now, so here's what I want to ask you guys. Right, I want to ask the collective: have you guys seen any valid arguments from the right side?
No.
They've been very silent right now, actually.
Yeah,
I
they're-
haven't seen
quiet.
any arguments from the right side. I'm not even gonna lie.
Okay, well, let's
I haven't
for a
seen any
second.
type of any post.
Yes.
Georgia is ran like like whoever's running the election in Georgia, they're Republicans. It's a Republican governor. It's
Mhm.
Republican director of elections. So and they're losing. Trump is now losing in Georgia, and he's trying to blame the crooked Democratic machine for like flipping the vote and everything and rigging these elections. Why would Republican governors and Republican directors of elections rig it for the Democrats? Why would they do that for the other side? Like it just
Georgia
doesn't.
wrote the book
And they
on voter suppression.
well, they have even a bunch of Republican governors, all of them have even came out saying that there's zero evidence of any fraudulence going on. Like
Even Trump's own election teams like come out like several times before, like saying like, yeah, there's no credible evidence of like an investigation made by the executive branch came back saying, yeah, there's very little evidence of mass fraud when it comes to.
You know, I was shook when Fox News came out saying that President Trump declared victory falsely, prematurely, and even Fox fucking News, of all people, said that there was no basis and no evidence of any fraudulence going on.
There's a patriotic responsibility there. I would hope that any American, clearly our president has shown he doesn't have this quality, but I would hope that any American would be willing to acknowledge that that's a lie and that he's.
And I think this is like the first time that we've ever seen a president actually say that the election system is rigged and the election doesn't work, and it's only because he's even when other presidents have been, no chance of winning, no other president or candidate has ever said that the election system is rigged, because how are you going to rep the country when you can't rep the election system that puts you in place? I don't fucking know. Maybe it's just me.
Daniel, go ahead. And then I do have a couple of questions I want to ask you guys. I want to get your guys' thoughts on it.
No, it's just something that I've been noticing on Facebook a lot. And it's actually, I've been kind of seeing it as almost a meme. I don't know if you've been seeing it. It's if you post something that says, oh, no matter who wins, we're all still Americans, blah, blah, blah. It's exactly who they voted for then.
Yeah.
It's not these people are going a lot of the conservative people that I have been seeing openly talking on social media and stuff like that. They're suddenly being I don't know why we have to be all nasty, blah, blah, blah. I'm you guys are the people who made mugs that said liberal tears, had fucking Trump MAGA flags hanging off your trucks, the
instant it doesn't go their way, they flip the fucking script.
And now they're being why are you guys trying to brag, blah, blah, blah. And we're oh, so you don't want us to be wearing Joe Biden hats for the next 4 years, or
right? They're saying, okay, so he won. Don't rub it in our faces. You guys have been rubbing it in our faces for 4 fucking years. You best believe you're gonna get some amount of comeback to that.
That's I said when I tried to make that comment, when they're gonna try to say that he's not their president or whatever. But now that's your president. Remember, I saw that Facebook post, ma'am.
And I don't want to see a single march or protest when he loses, because God forbid anything do it.
Yeah, we saw those Postmas thing, Mr. Thing.
Right.
They are.
So that's a good segue though. Let me ask you guys. So a lot of analysts thought that the protests and the riots were going to hurt the Democratic Party. But if we look at the results, Joe Biden won the city of Kenosha. The West Coast stayed solidly blue. In these communities where riots might have happened, they went blue.
They did, yeah.
It was rumored that it affected fundraising a little bit when the riots were happening. The Democrats were raising less money, but it clearly didn't affect their votes.
What happened in Minnesota, with Minneapolis? What happened with Minneapolis? And
I believe it
George
went
Floyd.
Solidly blue. I think it was. Yeah.
Okay. Because I know we haven't really been paying attention that much to it wasn't one of our battleground states or anything.
Can I interject for just a quick second? You said Kenosha went blue, but I don't.
The city of Kenosha, the city.
Oh, the city.
Yes, the city of Kenosha
voted Biden 2-1.
Yeah.
But the county itself was still Republican, still red.
Exactly, because that's you, Nick. That's where you are.
Listen. Pleasant Prairie is basically Kenosha. Calm down.
County.
You're in Stevens Point, Hannah.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying, Kyle.
Minneapolis did go fully blue, by the way.
Beautiful.
So why didn't the riots scare away Democratic voters?
Because I feel the media portrayal of a lot of the protests and riots didn't necessarily work for the people who didn't have certain biases.
I think, if anything, the riots and the protests kind of gave Democrats that little boost of encouragement that they needed. Seeing that everybody else was just as pissed off as they were, I think it did help kind of give them a little kick in the ass to actually go out and make that change, because they saw that maybe they weren't able to do it by marching through the streets or, you know, whatever the fuck was going on, but they were able to do it by fucking electing Biden and getting this asshat out of office, because he has been the driving force of all this fucking hate and division and everything.
I think it also has to do with how Trump responded to a lot of the riots. Him sending out like the secret police and shit like that in a lot of these major cities. For people who are like, oh, I don't really care for the riots, but then seeing people literally get disappeared. Like,
yes, there was no middle ground. It was basically protesters and then immediately National fucking Guard, riot force, like all this fucking shit. Like, yeah, I don't know.
So did it help Joe Biden then?
Yes, I think it did.
I also think it helped because at a lot of these rallies and when there were speakers and things, it was all summer pushed very heavily to vote, like vote, vote, vote. Mm-hmm. And then as it got closer, it became, all right, who are we going to vote for? And obviously, I mean, they started becoming more Biden based. But even from like the get-go when all of this kind of like took off full speed, it was always, all right, we're looking ahead. We need to make a change. The first thing we need to do is vote. Like we need to fix it from the inside. So I think all of that kind of on the ground community saying, all right, you need to make sure you vote, and then pushing kind of like the Biden narrative more so.
I think they just kind of expressed and exercised every option that they had to kind of push for a little bit of change. Even if there was violence, they also used that same energy that they had to go and, you know, fucking vote for Biden and do what they could to actually make change happen. Even if it wasn't necessarily effective with the riots and everything, it got the point across. It gave them the energy that they needed to do it.
Well, I also think it has something to do with like the hard numbers of it too, because 93% of the protests that happened during the summer were completely peaceful. But then it was also, on the contrary, a different number that happened that, you know, I might not have exactly the right number, but it was like 50% of the time that the police engaged these protests, it turned violent. So it's one of those things where if a wide majority of these protests are peaceful and they are saying, go out, vote, make your voice heard, and then the times that the police come up and instead of, you know, actually forming maybe like a dialogue or trying to like, you know, do like get something like going, half the time they're just beating the shit out of these protesters. It's, you know, the percentages don't match up. Like, how are you gonna like try to push, oh, you know, like go vote for Trump? They're, you know, the police are the good guys, but then half the time they're beating the shit out of the protesters. And then 93% of the time, the protesters are completely peaceful. Like, I think that aspect of it helped. I don't necessarily think riots helped, like the push for Joe. I think that neither increased his chances of winning or decreased his chances of winning.
I think it was the show of force on the other side that really.
Actually, I almost think the riots might have made some of the Republicans more willing to go out, because like I guarantee you, a lot of the Kenosha Republicans who weren't even planning on voting after shit went down in Kenosha, they're like, oh, these Antifas, like we gotta go. Like, you know, but that's how I feel about it.
Well, I mean, I can see that point too, because 4 years ago, Kenosha County went red by 238 votes, I think. And this year it went red by nearly 3,000 votes.
And I saw that firsthand at a lot of the mayoral meetings. You know, you would get up there and, you know, certain people would get up there and talk about how to bridge the gap in the community and bring the community together and start identifying real issues inside the community. And then these people, and they make you tell where you're from, right? I'm so-and-so from 56th and 21st, you know, oh, he's from the city, you know, and then they give another address far out in the county, and the contrast was very different. People from the city are talking about how they're seeing things better, and, you know, white and black people, brown and white people, you know, everybody working together. And then the people from the county would get up there and be like, oh my gosh, these buildings are burning, and it's just like, dude.
Yeah, it's like you polar opposite.
You're so
like
detached
people
from the whole situation.
Yeah, like people from uptown are gonna have a completely different perspective than people out in like fucking Summers or whatever the fuck. Like, it's gonna be
people who were compelled to vote this time around. because of that. And they're being detached from the actual situation.
A lot of West Osha really carried it for the Republicans. Like, if we're being completely honest, like over by Central and all of the farmland area.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Where my racist family lives. What's up? I hate all of you.
But you want to know something funny? This is slightly off topic, but there is a house in my neighborhood, in my trailer park that I live in. For 4 years, every single day in the past 4 years, they've had a Trump sign outside of their yard, and it's ranged from 1 Trump sign to 4 Trump signs, depending on how many I could take. I mean, depending on how.
Love that.
But every single day in the past 4 years, there has been some kind of Trump sign in their front yard. For the first time in 4 years, for 3 days straight, haven't seen a single Trump sign in front of their yard.
Love it. They're so ashamed of themselves.
They're like, all right. Debbie Ryan's it. I didn't.
Stop.
I mean, listen, even I could see the difference with this election as opposed to the last election. Pleasant Prairie is notoriously, a little more uppity and a little more Republican. But even in my neighborhood, even in my
the trailer park I live in is in Pleasant Prairie, not all of it.
Okay, well, I live in the suburbs of Pleasant Prairie, so I mean, even you can see around just my neighborhood, like a lot of the houses that did have all the Trump signs and the Trump flags, like even the house straight across the street from me, they completely switched it up and they actually had Biden signs. My neighbor across the street has a big ass Biden flag waving in his front yard. I gave him mad props for it. Yeah, you can tell that I think a lot of people are just getting fed up with Trump's bullshit, and it really started to show this election.
That's a good segue to my next question. We obviously know a lot of Republicans voted for Biden this year. There were whole movements to get Republicans to vote for Joe Biden. Yes. And we see it especially with the fact that Georgia went blue. Now, Georgia barely went blue, but Georgia went blue. Texas didn't go blue. It was close, but it didn't go blue. North Carolina's Democratic governor got reelected pretty easily. And there's still a small chance that North Carolina could flip blue when all the results come in. So why do you guys think that a state like Georgia went blue, but Texas didn't? And like obviously there was Stacey Abrams, shout out to her. But why do you think if you look at Hope, behind Hope right now, like Georgia is in a sea of red. It's a blue island. How did that happen? Like,
see, I have family in Georgia too, and a lot of them are saying that they saw more of the urban population coming out and expressing that they wanted to vote. Like more of the urban population is actually giving a fuck this election because they know what the fuck like stands against it. Trump has, boasted and touted that he has done more for the Black community than any president since Lincoln. But I'm sorry, if you're Black, you know that that's a fucking lie.
If you're any color, that's a lie.
Exactly. And like I feel like the urban community actually really showed up and showed out this time. Like, as opposed to last election, they didn't really, because they haven't showed in full force like this since, I think, since 2012 when Obama was elected again.
Well, I'm going to kind of challenge you on that notion, Kyle, because I'm pretty sure one of the streamers that I watch a lot, he mentioned that the percentage of Republican voters that went out this year, I think he said, I would have to go and find the clip, but he said that 88% of Republicans voted for Trump, which is about what Republicans do vote usually between the registered Republicans. So I don't know if it was more Republicans showed out, because I know there was the Lincoln Project and stuff that even though I disagree with the group and how that they're all George Bush era Republicans and stuff, their ads are really strong, but I think it still more plays into what the older Democrats, want to see in an ad. But when it comes to Georgia, I think I have to agree with Nick. I think it's purely because people in Atlanta and Savannah.
Yep. Savannah.
They said, "Fuck that, dude."
Yeah, because it was very red up until the mail-ins from the Atlanta area and like Fulton County. It was super red until those votes started coming in and getting counted. And that's when it fucking flipped, when these urban counties actually had all their votes being counted and everything.
Yeah, it's like I have the Georgia map up right now, and it's like Atlanta, Athens, Augusta, Savannah, Macon or whatever, all of them blue, and the surrounding areas are blue. And I guarantee you that's just where their population density is.
I'm not gonna lie. As a black person, I was sitting there and I was like, "What the fuck are you doing, Georgia? Like, are you serious? Like, you got like the mecca of the black population of the like in the United States, like
in Atlanta,
that's where." Man, like Atlanta, like what are y'all doing? Like you guys alone can change this right now. Like, and then when they started counting the mail-in ballots, I was like, oh, okay. Whew.
There you guys are.
My parents moved down there.
I mean, it's still a.
I'm like, what were you guys doing down there? You know, man, but I agree wholeheartedly with you and Dan.
It's still a shock to see such a red state turn blue like that.
Yeah, I think they said that it's been Republican since 1992 or something.
I never even really thought Georgia was Republican.
You shouldn't be shocked, though. Think about it. Go ahead, Hannah.
I said I never really saw Georgia as like a Republican state. Like I never really thought it was. Like I didn't.
Georgia has been super red forever. Like.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Why? Ludicrous.
That's the question.
Yeah, maybe it's just like
Georgia will decide who controls the Senate now. Both of Georgia's Senate races are headed to a runoff because of Georgia's weird law that you have to get over 50% to win. Mm-hmm. So both of their Senate races are headed to a runoff in January, and that will just, no matter what happens in North Carolina, that's going to decide the future.
Well, in Georgia, it's Purdue versus Ossoff for the Senate, right?
It's that, and then it's also Warnock versus, I don't know what the Republican's name is in the special Senate race.
I know Purdue sent out an email to his supporters saying, "Get ready for this runoff." And then right after he sends out this email, not like an hour or two later, he loses his 50%. And he's not even at 50% now.
No, it looks like both of the races will head to a runoff. And I mean, every friend I have around the country and like the Young Democrats of America and everything, like they're all talking about Georgia now. All eyes are going to be on Georgia. Georgia's the new Wisconsin. Like everything's on them. Everyone's going to be watching them. And it's going to be really interesting to see if they can keep it blue.
Because we're off the podcast, I'm actually looking to apply for certain organizations to see what I can do to help out in Georgia.
I would say, to your point that you made earlier, I wouldn't be so surprised about Georgia, generally being such a red state. If you follow the trend of a lot of like the bigger cities, how minorities are generally pushed to a certain point within a state, and then the rest of the state is like majority white. Wisconsin, Michigan, especially down there in Texas, and then Georgia. If they're little tiny hotspots, but those little hotspots have millions upon millions of minorities that can swing the election, as we've seen today. So that's my only thing I would say. I wouldn't be too surprised, because even though Georgia or Atlanta's not as big as the rest of Georgia, there's a lot of condensed,
It has one of the densest populations in the state. Yeah.
Do you think, Ryan, that it got that kind of turnout from those urban populations because it's a presidential election? Or do you think they can do it again now in January when they have this special Senate race?
I think it was strictly just because, and again, just speaking as a Black person, right, from my perspective, from a lot of our perspectives, we just get tired of racism being okay. You know what I mean? Go back to your country. And I think that was really galvanizing this election. Now, I do hope we pay attention, right, and say, hey, every 2 years, we got to keep voting locally and nationally. We have to have the same energy that we have for the presidential election for local and everything else, because otherwise it'll keep happening. Trump getting out of office isn't going to solve the problem, right? It's not going to solve the problem. It's just the start. And we can continue, you know, that same momentum. We have to have that same energy and keep educating ourselves. Not just showing up every 4 years.
I don't necessarily agree with that, because I feel like presidential elections have the most energy and force behind them than any other elections that fucking happen.
Because nobody else like goes out to those elections.
I don't think that, you know, there's going to be that. I don't think there's going to be that force behind local elections in Georgia and everything that there has been for this presidential race.
No, I agree. No, and I agree with you too, Ken. That's what I'm saying. We got to have that same energy that we had for this, you know, national election.
Yeah. I mean,
in
a perfect world, everybody keeps that energy 100% of the time, and they will show up to each election, and that is what will actually make actual fucking change. But why
don't we try?
But I just don't think that everybody has that same mindset. I don't think everybody has that energy to go out for all these like local elections, because they don't think that it matters as much as the presidential elections.
It's one of those things where.
But it matters more.
That nobody thinks it matters, because I think that's just not true. I think it's that nobody knows how to vote. My sister's 21 years old and never voted a day in her life. Had to have her 19-year-old sister help her. I had to help so many people like learn how to vote this year. It was crazy. So I don't think it's not. I think it's people, they care. They probably do. They just don't know how to do it. They don't have the resources or anything to like show you how to.
Right. And I think it's because there's not as much coverage and there's not as much backing as there is for the president. Like, I think we've all gotten to the point where we're completely annoyed by all the social media, like slamming down our throat. Are you registered to vote? Are you voting? Did you vote? Like, that doesn't happen for local elections. Like, kind of those advertisements, those little pop-ups, everything like that, that doesn't happen for local elections.
And
people don't. A lot of people just don't know listening about now, them.
Though. And one thing I want to say about, because, you know, especially in Georgia, when it comes to the runoff, I'm hesitant to say that there's going to be the same amount of energy going into that, because, you know, I'm already starting to see it where it's like, oh, you know, Biden's winning, you know, or Biden won, you know, it's time for politics to be boring again. Like, I don't have to think about it like anymore. Like, and it's like that energy that's like that we built up over the summer to be like, hey, the system's fucked up. Let's go and change it. Like a lot of on the liberal side of things, where people like weren't that into politics before, you know, Trump or anything like that. They wanted it to go back to the status quo. And now that they're like, oh, it's the status quo now. Like, it's back to normal. You know, I'm not going to pay attention anymore. Like, they're not going to want to like actually go out, because they're like, oh, we're back to normal. We have Joe Biden. You know, it's everything.
I would almost argue that as time goes on, as the years go by, people get more politically inclined. I don't think that there has been a lot of political backing for a lot of the like elections in the past until like 2016, and now this election. This is one of our most important elections we've ever had. We've had record fucking turnouts. I think, what did they say? Like 160, 170 million Americans actually came out and fucking voted. That's unheard of. Last fucking election in 2016, I think it was only like 120, 130. We had so many more people come out to this election. And I think it's because just as time goes by, as all this shit happens, as people want actual change, they're getting more into politics.
I've got just one more question.
Excuse me.
And on the election.
God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What issue? And I want to hear from everybody. I really want an answer from everyone. What issue and voting block won it this for Biden? So I think that the issue that won it for Biden was COVID. And I think that the voting blocks that won it for him were Black women and young people. But what is everybody's opinion on that as far as what won this for Biden?
Let's work down the line. Let's go in order on this one or something like that.
Sure. So I'll start with you, Daniel.
So like the main issue, like if I had to pick one, um, I'd also probably say COVID. I do think a lot of the racial tension that's happened over the summer definitely helped motivate a lot of the younger crowd, which I do think the younger crowd pushed Biden over the edge on this one, because a lot like me, Hope, Hannah, Nick, we're all Gen Z, and like we were our well, me and Hope's first, Nick's first election was back in 2016, but the people that were like directly a year below us, like I don't know, there was like a whole group, larger group of like the Gen Zs that were able to go out who felt very impassioned and very emboldened because of like what happened during the summer. So I think it's a mixture of like what happened with COVID for like the standard liberal like middle-aged people, but then I think when it comes to the younger crowd, which I think actually Biden over the edge, I do think it was a lot of the like the civil unrest that happened over the summer that really largely did it.
Hope?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think COVID, definitely COVID was a big part of it. And I feel like that turned a lot of Republicans as well, because a lot of people agree that he handled it totally horrible. But other than that, I also think social justice was a big thing. Maybe not even believing that he'll per se fix everything, but just that he won't make it any worse like Trump has been making it worse. And so, yeah, I also agree that it was a lot of young people deciding like, all right, maybe it's time to, either first election, second, whatever, I'm going to use my voice and, fight for some sort of change.
Ashley, what do you think?
I'm still here.
Okay. I was about to say, is Ashley still here?
Yeah. You guys were just like going at it for a minute and there was like no. I really think it's kind of like the same thing like Daniel and Hope are saying, but more so like, when I was like fresh 18, I didn't really have much of a voice. My family, like, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to believe. This is how you're going to be. And I feel like kids nowadays are like seeing it differently. And they're like, nah, fuck that. Like, I don't want this world. Like, if I have kids, they're not growing up in this shit. Like, they speak now. And I have the voice that I like have now and how I feel now. And, can tell my family that just ain't it. And it ain't going to happen. That I wish I had that some of the like 18-year-olds have now. And I feel like with all of like the protests and stuff going on, that they got to really be involved in like a moment for the world. Like they got to experience like everything that people would tell them wasn't real. Like, oh, racism doesn't exist. And then they watch it. And now it's all over. It's plastered on Facebook, TikToks, on like everything. There's so many different social media platforms for them to see it, that their voice isn't just like, yeah, fuck you, mom. Their voice is a Facebook post, a tweet, that's anything. It's they're really able to get out there more. And I think that's really what it was just they had a chance.
Sure. Brian?
I do agree with you on the COVID response. Definitely, Trump didn't make it hard. I mean, anybody in kindergarten, it could have been like COVID's bad and would have got people's votes. Says Trump definitely dropped the ball on that. But for me, I really go with the youth. Some of the protesting that I saw and the rallies that I saw put together this year that me and you attended, that was really, really awesome. And that kind of touched me in a different way. So I think it was the youth, the little babies on here, and Hannah, like those guys, really standing up and being like, hey, we're not anymore. And I really, again, as a Black guy, I hate using that word, but some of these events I go to, thrown by them or being at the same events, I'd feel safe. Be like, damn, these guys playing around. They're not like, let's go Biden, but they're really like, fuck Trump, and and the world that we're living in now is a direct result from him. We can't sugarcoat it. It is what it is. And some people may not like it. Some people may hear this podcast and think, we're anti-Trump. No, we're just fucking anti-hate, anti-racism, anti-sexism, anti-all-ism, So
I'm
big ups
anti-Trump.
to the youth.
Fuck Trump.
Hannah, what do you think?
About what?
About what?
No,
what issue?
skip her. She don't get a turn.
No, I didn't know. No, I know.
You know,
we were
wait.
talking about something, but you saw me walk. You saw me.
It's been a
Brian
while since you
was
asked
frozen
the question. It's been a while
until
since
she
you
said
asked the
she had no idea what was going on.
It's true. Brian was frozen.
And then she's like, what's going on? And he unfroze.
Wait, is that my internet then?
Kyle, why don't you just re-ask the question?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna.
Because
Hannah,
it's been a while since you've asked the question.
What? The question is, what issue do you think won it for Biden? And what voting block do you think won it for Biden? I said that I thought it was COVID and that the voting block was young people and Black women.
Okay. So don't do that, Daniel. So
Hamster wheel spinning.
So for I think everyone was saying the same thing I would about like young people. Like that's we all really know. I'm like the end of the answering chain. So everything you guys said is just kind of what I think. Not to be the one who's like, oh, I agree with everything you guys are saying. It's just like, I don't want to say the same thing again.
That's fair.
I'll put it in your own words.
See, if I could do that, I'd do
it.
She's just in agreement with the rest of you guys.
What do you think,
For
Nick?
now, just this time.
See, I would say that I do think it is COVID because I know that a lot of voters were asked, what is it for them? Are they more worried about COVID or are they worried about the economy? And those that said they were worried about COVID voted for Biden. Those that said that they were worried about the economy voted for Trump. But then again, I also think a lot of it had to do, I think Trump just did this to himself. I think everybody kind of just over the past 4 years has seen the continuous clusterfuck that is the Trump administration. And they've all been like, yo, we gotta fucking do something about this. I know plenty of people that were Trump supporters in 2016 and even in my own family. And after the past 4 years, they just said, yo, we can't, support that anymore. We can't endorse that. Even people that were Trump supporters, but weren't necessarily voters, actually made sure to register just so that they could vote against Trump. We saw this big Republicans against Trump movement that we haven't necessarily seen with a lot of past elections. Most of the time people just vote based on their party, but this was one of the first times where we saw such a huge movement of Republicans actively supporting a different party and doing all this work to show that they were voting against Trump. And that's what I think a lot of it is. I think a lot of it is just Trump doing this to himself. He dug his own grave and now he's got to fucking lay in it.
So can I just add something really quick on the younger voter part? This is because me and Hope aren't exactly old, but we're not as young as Hannah is. But for my own person,
me, Brian, and Nick and Ashley aren't that old either.
Well, I'm more speaking on me and Hope because Hope's my best friend. Chill.
All
I'm the
right.
same age
No,
as Daniel and Hope, so I don't know.
I don't know what you consider a young voter. I see people saying young voter from 18 to 35. So
I don't know what
I'd
his
say
point
under
is.
30. I'd say under 30 myself.
I usually count young voters from like 18 to 25, but whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, me too. I would.
You know, I think a lot of younger voters, you know, on the younger end, like closer to like the, you know, the younger 20s, you know, this summer was one of those things where, you know, like Ashley said before, like seeing things be real, like, you know, in high school and like school in general, we're taught about like the civil rights movement, and like we see pictures of people like marching in the streets in the South and shit like that, and, you know,
My book bag.
and but then like, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, we see videos, we see like them, you know, spraying them with fire hoses and shit like that, and we think it's terrible, and like, but then it's like, I think an entire generation over this summer, like the Gen Zs and a lot of the younger millennials, experienced it firsthand. You know, yeah, you have like those right wing ones that didn't go out, or like the ones that were like really far away from it that didn't go out. But it's like, you know, from us here in Kenosha, we went and we saw it. We got tear gas. We got fucking balled. Like, and it was like one of those things where I don't want to say it made younger people feel like they were part of a new civil rights movement, but I think it made it more real for a lot of younger people, and that motivated a lot of younger people who might have been apolitical or apathetic to going out and voting and stuff. I think it's just, I think it opened a lot of people's eyes, especially like the younger people who could vote. And I think this summer had a large part of it, you know, being a part of a movement, you know, like Brian was saying, where it made, you know, it made it seem like change could happen and shit like that. You know, it's like, I think that played a lot for like a lot of younger activists, or like people who even went to like one protest. Like, I feel like that inspired a lot of younger voters.
I mean, I think you're like completely right. I look at this as someone who was the youngest elected official in Kenosha. I was elected when I was 18, and nobody. No,
Don't
I'm
mean to
not saying
flex.
that. No, hold on. I'm not flexing. I'm saying that because when I did that in 2013, like a majority of my campaign, a majority of my supporters were still old people. Like, yes, I stole away this little section of a vote from Parkside because I lived on campus and could campaign there. Yes, that happened, but like it wasn't a youth movement, and even with Obama, we didn't see young people take things so seriously, I think. And that's something that I've seen over this past year, being out on the streets and being involved in this, I think it is a civil rights movement, being involved in this, like the amount of energy coming from young people right now is amazing. And Gen Z and millennials are the majority of the voters in America. They are the majority. And in this election, like, we finally proved it. We showed that young people in the future, they are the now. Like, they are the right now. And they are
be the change you want to see is a lot of our mottos.
It's like, as more of the older conservative vote dies out, just more of the younger, you know, left vote is literally.
Well, and that's like why and this is a good segue into something I just thought of I wanted to ask you guys about. We talked about like third parties, like a rise in third parties and a rise in the Libertarian Party, and how and I could see where young people could usher that in, because young people are traditionally either more leftist or more libertarian as opposed to liberal or conservative, and that's definitely a change that's happening, but. Now in this election, so Gary Johnson 4 years ago got over 4 million votes.
Yeah,
and
Gary Johnson. I'm sorry, Joe Jorgensen didn't have shit on.
Joe Jorgensen hasn't even broken 2 million. So what's that? Like, what happened there?
She got
it was
like
more. I think a lot of. I think it was
Ashley.
where it was like the.
Yeah, Ashley, what were you saying?
In a lot of states, like the amount of counts that she got was like a solid like 1% for like a lot of states, and that was really it. And like Daniel was about to say, I think the biggest thing that prevented a lot of people that were like Joe Jorgensen supporters to go out there and specifically vote for her was the fact that there's like thousands of people breathing down their throats going, if you fuck this up, we're gonna die. And they're just like, you know.
I mean, it's shitty to say, but in my opinion, a third party vote is a vote wasted. And it shouldn't be that way. I don't agree that it should be that way. I don't agree in like a bicameral legislature. I think that we should not have just two parties. We should have more, like an abundance of fucking parties that we can choose between. But just in the system that we have now, you kind of just have to comply to the system that we do have and recognize that a third party vote isn't going to fucking do anything.
I disagree in the fact that I think it's a wasted vote, because if the closer people inch to that 5% mark where they're able to get federal funding, that is good. Even if it's like a libertarian party, which I don't like the Libertarian Party, I would love to see them get federal funding. I would love to see any of these third parties get federal funding. I do think, though, for the third party system, you know, a third party to actually rise, I think there needs to be more conceded effort to actually put forward these third parties.
Yes, I agree.
Maybe with that. You see an actual consolidation of the third party where, you know, the Green Party and the Libertarians, you know, consolidate. Or I think there needs to be more of a mass movement towards having that third party, and not a, oh, have you heard of, like, have you seen these like shitty JoJo memes? Like, so I don't agree with this notion that a third party vote is a wasted vote. I just do think that until we get that 5%, you know, mark, or we have a mass movement towards it, I don't personally think I'll ever vote third party until there's
I agree with that.
If it's what you truly believe in, I hope I want you to talk next, but if it's what you truly believe in, no, it's not a wasted vote. If you truly believe in the candidate, vote for the candidate, vote your conscience. If you're voting for the candidate because you just don't like the other two, not a great reason. But Hope, you've been like waving your arms around.
I just don't want to get I don't want us to move on before I get this in here. So they need 5% to get the federal funding. And Joe Jorgensen was not going to get that. I think there's going to be a time and place for the third party to have their moment and get their funding. I don't think this was the election to be doing that, because I feel like almost in a way we're going to have to, I don't want to say this because I feel like Kyle especially is going to shake his head. We're almost going to have to throw an election to, you know what? I don't know.
What do you mean? Wait, what do you mean?
To be such a force behind the third party.
It's so to get enough people to decide, all right, neither one of these is what I want. I'm going to vote third party and get them their 5%, you know? That's taking away those votes from either parties. And this is coming from someone who has very little political knowledge. So yeah, Ashley, please jump in, because this is just my thoughts. That's what it feels like is going to have to happen.
It's not even just that. It's either way, we wouldn't be throwing an election. So if enough people
that was the wrong word.
Speaking, if we got together and all right, dog, so the plan is we just need this many people and we have 5%. Even if we take away just 5%, nobody's throwing away one of the two idiots that somebody voted for is still gonna fucking be up there if I do 5%. But if everyone legitimately believed for a fucking split second that, you know what, man, I really like this third person more than I like these other two, I'm gonna do it because it's what matters most to me. I believe in that. And going, I don't think it will work, I'm gonna try never, just fucking because. Then it doesn't make any sense. If you never do the thing that you want, when will you get it?
I knew this would make everyone want to say stuff. Brian.
What's up, Brian? What's up, Brian?
Really quick and simple. This was not the election for it.
We say
exactly. That's okay. I agree with that.
This was not the election for it.
Ashley's got a point, though. We say that every year.
Okay, but that one really was not the one.
But this election was really about getting Trump out of office.
Yeah, that was this. Maybe next election, we could be a little bit more serious about it.
But the
And
thing
that-
is,
I wouldn't
is that
vote-
the
Hold on, wait. Let Brian finish real quick.
The only thing mine is again, I would be really scared to live in the world with Trump as president for 4 more years because I casted my vote for somebody I think is super competent to be president, like someone like Joe Jorgensen or Gary Johnson, you know. But
Or Howard Hawkins.
this was not, and I hate saying that, I really do. This wasn't the election, no. This wasn't the election for it.
But if,
quick things.
oh,
Two quick
Daniel,
things. Just two
Daniel,
quick
go
things.
ahead.
One of them is actually like I'll do the one that I think is quicker. I think the best way to grant legitimacy to some of the third party options is that we actually start to get them included in on the debates. I think
Exactly.
during
Yeah,
the
yeah.
presidential debates, like when we had Trump versus Biden, if we had given JoJo or Gary Johnson or like whoever else was running who had like a bit of a like, I'm not saying we need to have like some dumbass parties like the fucking Trotskyites in Chicago who have 12 votes. Like, no, don't give them, it's like the real third
Kanye.
have millions of votes across the nation. Give them a chance. Like, will it change a lot of people's minds? Maybe, but it'll actually give some of these people like a chance to be like, hey, if you don't like these two geriatric nerds, you could have me who believes in unbridled capitalism.
Right. Because a lot of the times
So-
there's such a focus on the two parties that people don't even know who the third party candidates are.
And then the second thing I wanted to say was the reason I agree with Ashley on the, we say it every single time when this election is too important. And I think that actually has something to do with the overall system that we have, in the fact that the Democratic Party has slowly been shifting further right, as well as the Republican Party has slowly been shifting further right. So every single election where you have a Democrat versus a Republican, the Democrat's going to be, oh, I'm a moderate, like I'm the normal guy, but then the Republican is just going to become more and more of a maniac. Like we went from Ronald Reagan to, George Sr. wasn't that bad. But then we had Bush, who literally had Dick Cheney, who was a literal fascist. After that, we had the Mitt Romney type, who he's just a technocrat, who literally did not give a fuck about the people. So then we were like, oh, this election's too important. Trump, obviously, yeah, it's getting worse. So it's one of those things where I feel like every single election, the candidates are almost borderline going to get worse, at least on the Republican side.
Yeah, they're just more and more extreme.
I have no doubt that the next Republican candidate in 2024 is not going to be a neo-fascist like Trump. It's going to be like that one dude out of Florida. What's his name? Black hair. He has a goofy last name. You got to know who I'm talking about, Kyle. He's in the Senate. Whatever his name is.
Marco Rubio?
Oh, fascist. Like huh?
Is it Ron DeSantis?
He was in.
Ron DeSantis. There's Ron DeSantis. You're not talking about Marco Rubio, right?
No, not Marco Rubio. I'm talking about, God, what is his name? He's like an actual fascist. And he was in like a lot of the hearings for the Mueller report.
Oh, I know you're talking about.
He has like the black hair, he has a square head. I'm gonna think of his name as soon as we stop recording. It's like, I do agree with Ashley, where it's like we always say the election, like that election is too important, but it's one of those things where the candidates consistently get worse every single election, where the Democratic nominee is getting further right, and then the Republican nominee is getting way further right. Yeah, if you look at the
Democratic Party has more left than it has ever been.
I fundamentally disagree. I think the centrist
You
party,
can see the change in platform.
Listen,
I sat on the floor of conventions as they changed the platforms to make it more liberal.
I disagree. Because liberalism is still a function of conservatism. It really is. But they just pretend about
Anytime, Ashley. You look like you're brewing and stewing over there.
Man. just hanging out. There was one thing that I wanted to say really quick.
Say what I said.
You guys brought the debate. They actually the debate place actually invited Howie Hawkins and Joe Jorgensen to debate, and both Joe Biden and Trump denied and said they wouldn't go.
Yep. after Gary Johnson and Jill Stein 3 years ago sued the debate commission for not allowing them and not inviting them to the debate, and they won that lawsuit. But for some reason, despite that lawsuit, Joe and Donald were able to still decline it. And it doesn't make much sense to me.
So they didn't hold that debate just because they weren't going. So instead, Joe Jurgensen and Howie Hawkins took the other option and tried to live feed themselves, like answering the questions as they were answering it. But obviously that's not good enough. And for them to just be like, yeah, no, I don't want to, is just fucked.
Well,
They don't.
Parties are never going to relinquish their power. That's why they denied that. It's not a surprise that Trump and Biden both said it, because then it's going to give a third party, regardless on which party it is, whether it be the Libertarians or the Greens. It's going to give them the chance to lose the power that they have. And
I think it's going to take a major shift or a major event for something to happen to where the third parties actually do step up and have a chance to even be in the spotlight as much as the other two parties are.
Well, just imagine a third party this election. Do you guys really think a third party this election would have had a chance at all, knowing how strong?
Not this election. Not this election.
Like supporters are. Like this election, I mean that wholeheartedly with this election. It was not the time for the third party would have just split the Democratic Party in half. And then Trump would have been winning by a landslide.
You're right. And that's why, in my opinion, the only way we're ever going to see a third party candidate, and Daniel's not going to like half of this, and he's going to like half of it. But half of it is that we need ranked choice open primaries. We need primaries where every candidate is listed from every party, and it's a ranked choice selection, and the top two winners are the two candidates in the general election. That fixes this problem. That fixes the duopoly. We need that, and we need to allow them to debate. We always need to allow them to debate.
I agree with that.
We also need to curb campaign finance laws, because a third party just isn't going to raise as much money as the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. It just isn't going to happen. But also the part that Daniel's not going to agree with me on.
I was wondering what you were going to say that I didn't like. I was like, yeah, I like this.
Is that if you look at the history, the most successful third party candidate, Gary Johnson, also one of the most moderate third party candidates in history. Until we have a moderate that both sides of the American people, that both sides of the spectrum can get on board with, someone who represents views like who's pro-gun but also pro-gay rights, who wants a flat tax but also wants free healthcare for everyone. Until you have a candidate like that, a candidate that represents those ideals, you won't have a third party victory. You need a true moderate centrist to win as a third party. Go ahead, Daniel, and go ahead.
You are wrong, because in the Bush v. Clinton, it was the first time a third party candidate ever won an entire state. So Gary Johnson was not actually the most successful one to ever run, because he didn't win a single state. So I don't remember what his name was, but
Exactly. Yeah. You don't. All right.
I don't know what his name was, but I barely know what Gary Johnson's name was. But it's objective fact that he's not the most successful one. I just needed to correct you.
In the popular vote, and I don't pretend to know for a fact.
Did he win a state? No.
But did he win more popular votes?
I'll check right now. Let me check.
Well, Daniel's checking that. I have not been keeping track of time. I don't know if anybody has.
We gotta wrap up.
Okay, so let's just shift real quick. There is something else I wanted us to talk about, more local, and that is the county board.
Oh yeah,
Brian, what'd you say, Brian?
Oh no, I was just checking to make sure Hope was still awake.
Got it.
Looks like you've been falling asleep half this time.
I'm just deflecting.
Anyway, so locally, the non-election related, but the county board approved their budget last night. In their budget, they're adding 6 sheriff deputies. This is in Kenosha. They're adding 6 sheriff deputies, I was told that these deputies are only there for security in the courthouse, that they're getting rid of private security in the courthouse and that they're staffing up more deputies. So they're doing that. Also, body cams were promised by this county board in the summer. Brian was at the meeting. He could tell you. They were promised to Kenosha residents, to everyone. The county board said they would pass body cams. They had it in the budget. The board members who proposed body cams don't like to increase taxes, don't like government spending, and so they just voted against body cams. They literally just voted against it when they were the ones who proposed it and derailed it. And one county board member has also pointed out that this fundamentally does actually defund the police because they didn't approve the bonding. Like the budget isn't funded. And this is the conservative wing that voted on this. And now we're not going to have body cams in the sheriff's department. Another just caveat to this is the city is also about to look into its budget, and they want to increase KPD's budget by $1 million. So I just wanted to get people's thoughts on that with everything that's been going on in Kenosha, that's what our local electeds are doing right now.
My thought is it's bullshit.
Second that.
And it's going against what everybody in the entire fucking country has been advocating for, which is defund the fucking police, not give them more fucking money. And I think we see a lot in Kenosha that the police have way too much fucking power. They're given way too much leeway. And despite everybody in Kenosha, I feel like a majority of people in Kenosha, in the city, have all said, like, we need to defund this. We need to knock it down a little bit. We need to make sure that they're held accountable. They were supposed to have body cams, I think, years ago. It was up for debate.
The city was supposed to have them, and they've never funded it.
And I think it was a guarantee that by 2020 they would have body cams. And then we saw the whole George Floyd and then Jacob Blake incident where they didn't have body cams, and that brought it back into light. And even though people have spoken out against that, saying, you guys promised we would have body cams by now, we don't still, what the fuck is up? Give us body cams. And now that they're fucking shutting that shit down, I think is a spit in the face to the majority of Kenoshans. And that's my 2 cents.
I'm not going to say much on this because I've already talked a lot, but I did look it up, and I do have some facts for you, Kyle.
Oh, God.
The last third-party candidate to win a state was George Wallace in 1968, and the last third-party candidate to win 5% of the popular vote was Ross Perot in 1992 and 1996, and he won 5% of the vote. So, boom.
How many votes?
It doesn't say.
Okay.
More than 3.3%, so own libtard.
I believe you know what, we'll have to do a separate thing about this. Brian, what were you gonna say? Yeah, what were you gonna say?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So what I was gonna say about the body cams is, first thing, the verbiage on the body cams was to protect the police. It wasn't to protect the citizens. It was actually to protect the police. A lot of people don't know that. Second, I don't think we should get too up in arms about not having body cams here in Kenosha. And the reason why I say that is because if we focus our efforts on that, it'll really take away from police reform. They'll try to keep us focused in on just body cams, when there's other things that they can be training on, like sensitivity training, de-escalating training, how we can reroute the money that they actually get in. So there's other ways and other things that we need to be focusing on other than just the body cams, because I know they're going to give us pushback on the body cams, period. So I agree that I think it was bullshit, especially after they made it seem like they were in our faces and they were like, oh, this is something that's really going to get passed. We're really going to do this. And I feel like Zach Rodriguez used us and used our momentum and used our presence against everybody else in there when we went to that board meeting. But again, I don't think us not getting the body cams right now is a bad thing. I think it actually shows what we've been fighting for. So the fact that we ask them to do something and it's not an unreasonable thing and they don't do it. So that's something that we can use against them. And it makes it, I feel like, to be honest, I'm kind of just like, cool. I'm glad you guys showed your hand here, because now moving forward, when we start going to these county board meetings, this is something that we can throw in their face. And then now we can keep the pressure on them. We don't have to be all buddy with them. Gloves are off at this point, especially after finding out that they didn't pass this. And this has been on the docket for what, since 2016, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's been for a few years. Yeah.
So come on now. After you just shot somebody 7 times in the back this summer, cool. We see how you guys are playing.
I'm gonna try to ask 2 questions and try to play this from both sides. First of all, sure, it's not a problem because they showed themselves, but it is a problem because like people should be able to trust their elected representatives, and we clearly can't. Zach Rodriguez said he would vote for bonding if body cams was attached to it. And last night he abstained from it. So like that, how does that inspire trust? How can anyone ever trust him as their elected official again?
You can't. He basically, I feel like he, fucking dug his own grave with that one for sure.
But from the other side of it, Gabe Nudo, another conservative within the city on the county board, he asked to separate body cams from the rest of the issues that are funded, and they also voted against funding a new veterans park, against road funding, and Gabe asked for them to vote on body cameras separately because I think he wanted to support it, but he didn't want to support the other things. And I don't know the exact vote, but it sounds like the more left-leaning county board members might have rejected that offer. And was that the right thing to do?
I see. I'm torn here because I think we kind of developed a little bit of a rapport with a lot of our county board members over the summer, right? And to hear that and to see that and to know that, like I said, it just kind of puts it in the perspective of we know exactly how they're playing now. That's just how I'm looking at it now from my perspective. There's no more buddy like the rapport we had. We have to keep it as strictly business as they're keeping it, and our demands have to sustain. Like they cannot change, and we have to keep the same intensity that we've been having over the whole summer, and not just realizing, some of those board meetings did get a lot of hand, but we need to make sure that we stay on their ass. I don't agree with it not being supported this time around. Like, it's 2020. The shit happened in your backyard. Your city burned down because of this. And just like I told David Beth, like, body cams shows trust within the community. If you're not trying to build that, but you want to add 6 more police to the fucking, what was it? The courthouse?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, to get rid of private security.
Why?
So
like, what's going down at the courthouse that you really need to? Rittenhouse. Oh, can I even say that name on here?
I really didn't.
Fuck Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah, fuck it.
Don't say that name.
Yeah.
All right, well, we gotta wrap it up, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Does anyone else have anything they didn't get to say that they want to say?
No, it's been like almost 2 hours on here.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we're all good.
All right, you guys. Well, then this was 262 Talks, and we are out.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.